Hello, and welcome to the second video in our series about the Performance Improvement System. If you are new to Perform, please check out the first video for an overview of the system. Today, we're going to talk about how to facilitate a Perform session. In this video, we'll compare and contrast two styles of facilitation, directive and participatory. We'll also talk about why participatory facilitation is the best style for Perform and provide some do's and don'ts for facilitators to get the most out of their sessions. Facilitators play an important role in the Perform system. They help guide the team through iterative cycles of goal setting, assessment, performance improvement planning, and performance monitoring. A key aspect of the assessment occurs during Perform's mapping phase, when team members gather to discuss and score how well the organization does in relation to 25 practice statements. Let's now look at two styles of facilitation, directive and participatory. The Perform system was designed to be implemented using an open, participatory facilitation style, which promotes learning and shared ownership of decisions. In a moment, we'll look in on two different sessions so we can compare and contrast these facilitator styles. Both sessions take place during Perform's mapping phase, when teams score 25 practice statements to assess organizational performance. In the scenario we're about to observe, a team with a facilitator's support is scoring one of the practice statements included in Perform. They have 3 tasks to complete. First, they need to discuss the meaning of the practice statement, especially the italicized words that appear in the statement. It's important to make sure that everyone understands the statement in the exact same way. Second, the team will need to achieve consensus about how well their organization is doing in relation to the practice statement. That's so they can assign a score. Finally, the team needs to identify evidence that supports their scoring recommendation. Tasks 2 and 3 should overlap, as participants will need to summon evidence to support their recommended score. Miriam is the facilitator in our first session. She is also a member of the organization's board of directors. The group is now discussing a practice statement that belongs to the Attracts and Sustains Support performance domain. The specific practice statement they are examining is frequently shares useful information and valuable resources with peer organizations. Note that the word frequently is italicized. In this case, the group will need to determine how often their organization must share information and resources with peer organizations in order for it to be considered frequent. The team must then score the practice statement as a strength, meaning the statement very accurately describes their organization, an asset, meaning that the statement somewhat describes their organization, or challenge, meaning that the statement mostly does not describe their organization. Let's check in on Miriam's session. We're in a conference room with 5 team members seated around a table. A flip chart is at the front of the room, and Miriam stands beside it, marker in hand. Each team member has a list of all 25 Perform practice statements.
Thanks to all of you for the excellent progress that we're making today. Let's continue our discussion by examining the next practice statement under the Attracts and Sustains Support domain. I'll read the statement aloud. Frequently shares useful information and valuable resources with peer organizations. Let's decide where we stand as an organization. Who wants to begin? Thanks, Alex.
When we talk about frequently, are we considering a specific time frame, like monthly or quarterly?
For the purpose of this discussion, let's define frequently as at least once a month. That's a good standard for us. It's commonly used in business settings and aligns with what I believe is a robust sharing frequency. This is based on what I've observed in other organizations.
But shouldn't we consider the quality and impact of what's shared over just the frequency?
I agree with Jordan. Quality is really critical.
Quality is important. But for now, let's agree that frequency will be our measure. It simplifies our assessment, and frequency is the italicized word in the statement that we just read. That means that we should pay extra attention to it. Based on that clarification, how do we score ourselves?
Well, if it's monthly, I'd say we're more of an asset than a strength. We do share, but maybe not as systematically as defined here.
Asset it is. I think that's accurate. We do share, but not to the extent that it's a strength. Now, let's quickly identify evidence to support this. I'll start. Our newsletter is a prime example. It goes out to all our peer organizations monthly. Anything else?
The webinars we hosted last quarter, don't they count?
Excellent example, Taylor. Webinars do count. So we have 2 solid pieces of evidence. Given our time, I think we should move forward with rating ourselves as an asset. Are we in agreement?
That's right, yeah.
Sounds reasonable.
Okay, asset it is. Let's make note of our evidence and record our consensus score. And let's keep moving forward so that we can quickly identify the areas where we need to improve.
Now, let's analyze what we've just watched. In this session, how does Miriam approach her role as facilitator? She takes a leading role in making decisions on behalf of the group. She also somewhat limits the open exchange of ideas. She defines terms, directs the outcome, and encourages quick consensus, prioritizing efficiency and her own perspective over a fully collaborative process. Miriam probably also sees herself as a subject matter expert by citing research and her prior experience. What's the impact of Miriam's approach? It limits the exploration of diverse ideas, likely resulting in conclusions that don't reflect how the group really feels. And any plans that ultimately arise from these conversations are not likely to have a great deal of ownership by the team, since the team members weren't fully engaged in the conversation. Let's now travel to our second session, which takes place in the offices of a different local NGO. Carl, the facilitator in this new scenario, also serves on the organization's board of directors. This group is scoring the same practice statement that Miriam's group reviewed. The physical setup of the room resembles what we just observed. Let's step inside and see what's happening with this second team. While you watch, think about how this session compares to the previous one.
Can someone please read the next practice statement under attracts and sustains supports? And could you then state in your own words what you think the statement means? Thanks, John, for volunteering.
Sure thing. The statement is, frequently shares useful information, valuable resources with peer organizations. To me, what this statement means is that we regularly offer our fellow organizations working maternal and infant health care access to our special reports and studies. And maybe we also share some of the tools we developed to monitor family well-being.
Excellent. Thanks, John. Does anyone else have a different understanding? From your silence, it looks like we're all in agreement. Great. So, what do you think frequently means in our context? Let's start by sharing our initial impressions. Sam, it looks like you want to say something. Do you?
Yes. To me, frequently suggests a regular pattern, but I think the impact of what's shared is just as important as how often.
Leo?
I agree with Sam. Maybe we could consider frequently as something that's not just about the number of times, but also about the quality. Look, the practice statement even says the information we're sharing should be useful and valuable.
Thank you, Leo, for sharing these observations. Are there any other examples from our work where we've shared valuable resources or information with peers? This might help us define frequently in a way that reflects both our values and our actual practices. Priya, you've got your hand raised. What are you thinking?
Well, we have our quarterly newsletter, and there's also this collaborative research project we did last year. Those were significant, But are they enough to be frequent?
Omar?
Don't forget the monthly update emails to our partner organizations. They might not be as in-depth as the newsletter or the research project, but they are consistent.
I'm going to write some of these ideas on the flip chart. We're getting some great concrete examples here. If I'm understanding you correctly, it sounds like we have a mix of in-depth sharing and some more regular updates. How does this variety make us feel about our rating? Leo?
Considering Omar's point, I feel that we're leaning more towards being a strength. The monthly updates combined with the quarterly newsletters and occasional projects show a sustained effort.
Sam?
I'm a bit hesitant. Are we consistent enough with our sharing to consider it a strength?
It's important to consider all perspectives. Let's take a moment to reflect individually on this. Think about the evidence we've discussed and how it aligns with our definition of frequently. Let's pause for a moment and then share and see whether we could arrive at consensus. Okay, so who would like to share thoughts? Thanks, Priya.
Reflecting on it, I think we do a good job in this area. But there's room for improvement. Maybe we're more of an asset, but with potential to grow into a strength, right?
I agree with Priya. Being honest about where we are is the first step to improving.
So, it seems we're leaning toward rating ourselves as an asset, with a clear view of how we can improve. This discussion has been really rich thanks to all the insights you've shared. By acknowledging our current position, we've also started to chart a path forward. How does everyone feel about documenting asset as our consensus, with a note on our ambition to improve? Okay, I can see you're all nodding your heads. Thanks to all of you for your thoughtful contributions. Let's document our decision and the supportive evidence we've discussed. Great job, team.
Now, let's analyze the session with Carl. How does Carl approach his role as facilitator? He encourages a broad and inclusive discussion, carefully avoiding any direct endorsement or evaluation of ideas. Instead, he acknowledges each contribution and facilitates the exploration of how these ideas could work together, fostering a collaborative environment where all suggestions are valued equally. Carl genuinely appreciates each participant's input and does not position himself as the sole expert, but rather as a collaborator in the group's exploration of ideas. So what's the impact of a participatory approach like Carl's? It broadens the range of ideas considered by the team while also fostering a deep sense of engagement and ownership. Miriam and Carl represent two different mindsets, which align with two different styles of facilitation. Carl, a participatory facilitator, says to himself, "The team members are the experts, and I'm here to support their collective decision-making." Miriam, the directive facilitator, says to herself, "I'm the expert here, and I'm here to guide the group so they can make the right decision." The main difference between the two styles lies in who makes decisions on behalf of the group, the team members or the facilitator. Now, let's summarize the two facilitation styles in terms of their underlying principles. In participatory facilitation, it's important to achieve inclusivity and group empowerment. We know that all participants have valuable insights and contributions, so the facilitator encourages individuals to share their perspectives and co-create solutions. Participatory facilitation also emphasizes collaboration and collaborative problem solving and decision making. Participants are encouraged to share their experiences and work together to develop a shared understanding of the discussion and a shared investment in the outcomes. The discussion flows organically and reflects the genuine perspectives and needs of the group. In other words, there's authenticity. The principles behind directive facilitation are quite different. The facilitator focuses on direction and control. The facilitator has a specific outcome or set of conclusions in mind and steers the discussion toward these endpoints. This perhaps is in the name of efficiency, because the directive facilitator prioritizes reaching a decision or conclusion quickly often at the expense of a thorough exploration of the topic. Participant input is solicited to the extent that it aligns with predetermined outcomes. This potentially limits the range of ideas that are explored and leads to limited participant engagement. Finally, the directive facilitator relies on facilitator expertise, offering suggestions, comments, and conclusions that reflect the perceived subject matter expertise. Here's how the two styles differ in terms of the techniques they employ. Participatory facilitators ask open-ended questions that encourage broad, thoughtful responses. They listen more than they speak, ensuring that participants feel heard and valued. They summarize what participants say and ask follow-up questions for clarity. They also voice appreciation for participant contributions. They work hard to engage all participants in creative thinking and collective problem solving. Participatory facilitators set aside time for individual reflection and group brainstorming. They help participants, occasionally, visualize their thoughts and ideas. In contrast, what does the directive facilitator do? Well, directive facilitators ask questions that are intended to elicit specific responses or move discussion in a particular direction. They highlight or build on those responses that align with their predetermined outcome. And they often play the role of expert by offering advice, presenting solutions, or suggesting best practices that move the group's decisions in a direction determined by the facilitator. And finally, here's how the two styles differ in terms of the results they're likely to achieve. Participatory facilitators ensure that participants have a shared understanding of issues, next steps, and plans. Participants take ownership over the solutions and strategies that they develop, which make those solutions and strategies more sustainable. Individual and group capacities for collaboration, critical thinking, and problem solving expand. Innovations emerge from groups' discussions. And the organizational culture that develops is one of trust, mutual respect, and collaboration. In contrast, directive facilitators have discussions that reflect the facilitator's preferences. Participants are less committed to implementing decisions as they are perceived to be externally imposed rather than co-created. So, the organization's capacity to improve its performance is only slightly strengthened. Now, what can you do to make sure that you're a participatory facilitator and not a directive facilitator? Here are some do's and don'ts. Do make sure that everyone has the opportunity to speak and contribute, especially those who may be quieter or less inclined to share. Ask open-ended questions that encourage discussion, reflection, and the sharing of diverse perspectives. Listen actively. Show genuine interest in participants' contributions, summarizing and reflecting back what you hear to ensure understanding and validation. Create a safe environment by establishing ground rules that promote respect, confidentiality, and a non-judgmental space for sharing. Guide the conversation without dominating it. Remember that your role is to support the group in finding its own solutions and conclusions. Use inclusive language. Avoid jargon or terms that might exclude or alienate. Remain neutral by refraining from inserting personal opinions. And finally, regularly summarize key discussion points. This will help ensure shared understanding and progress toward decision-making. And now, the don'ts. Don't dominate the conversation. Don't dismiss any contributions. Don't allow one voice to take over. Don't use closed questions, for example, yes-no questions, or questions that limit the range of appropriate responses. And don't position yourself as the sole expert or authority. If you follow these tips, you'll be well on your way to being an outstanding Perform facilitator. Good luck and happy facilitating! For further information about Perform, visit the Momentum website. You'll find a host of valuable resources to help you on the Perform journey.